went to Florence Black, went to Agnew, the old one, and Mesquite High School. And I'm married to my high school sweetheart. Matter of fact, last Friday was our 50th anniversary. We've been married 50 years. Very, very proud of that. We work together every day. She comes to the office, and we still get along. So
this is what the class is on tonight, right?
It can happen. Well,
I forgot to mention also that Terry is one of Mesquite's 2 council-appointed members of the North Texas Municipal Board Water District Board of Directors for a long time. If you're in real estate, you should know the role that the North Texas Municipal Water District plays, because with all the new developments coming in, water is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And I'm sure you can talk about that for an hour if you want to.
Yeah, we could spend a long time on that.
He's very involved in the community as well as the real estate works.
But I got started in the real estate business when I had a health issue when I was in high school. I had a heat stroke, and they told me I never could work outside. So at 17 years old, at that time you had to be 21 to get your license. Well, I got sounds kind of crazy, but I got my minorities removed so I could go get my license. So I started selling real estate right out of high school. I went to SMU. I graduated from SMU, and my wonderful wife worked until I got out of school, and then we had our first child, and I've got a daughter who is 45 and a son that is 42. They both are now in the business. My daughter was a teacher. My son played baseball a little while, and then he came and he takes over and runs the construction side. He does real estate also. Now, when I first got started, just like a lot of y'all, as I heard y'all say a while ago, that some of you have only been doing this for a year and 2 years, and then some longer, obviously. You know, it's really important as you go forward not to give up on this passion of what you're doing. Now, everyone in this room, trust me, I've been through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. I've been the roller coaster ride that this has been, and it's been a struggle. I'll be the first to tell you, probably nobody in this room has been as broke as I've been. But again, you have to persevere, and you have to hang in there, and you have to build relationships. And so as you move forward with this, and as whether it be homes, I sold homes, we built homes. So homes was what got me started, and was our base, because that's where the base comes from. You know, you hear guys that go to college and they jump in here and they go to work for the big guys downtown, you know, and they become a team of 3 or 4 or however many, whether it be leasing or whether it be retail or whether it be office or whether it be management, and that's all they concentrate on. And that's okay, but your base is to me, as long as I've done this, was when I first started, is selling those homes to those families and making those families happy and building that relationship. Because if you do your job as an agent, then that moves forward with the next person. You've sold a house to somebody that's got a friend that needs a house, and then all of a sudden, here we go, we've got something that you've got done. But again, you have to have patience and stay with it, because it's extremely hard. I had a gentleman tell me one time, well, we were at a ball game with my sons, and he worked for TI, and he decided, I'm going to quit TI. I see you at your son's ball games all the time. What do you do? I said, I sell real estate. He goes, well, if you can come to ball games, I'm going to sell real estate. I said, okay. So he quit, and he got his license, and he went to work, and, oh, I don't know, the next season, I said, John, what are you doing? He said, oh, man, I couldn't do that. He said, how do you do that? You don't make any money. I mean, you got to close the deal to make money. How do you survive? I said, well, you have to have patience, first of all, and it's not as easy as it looks. And as everybody in this room knows, okay, how long did you work on that deal you just closed? For quite a while, in a good market.
Like
okay?
60 days.
You know, and again, things happen, and you got to be able to withstand, you know, that time of trying to get, and that deal might fall apart. Nobody in this room's had too many deals that's fell apart here in the last 5 or 6 years, so you all have relished on some times that are pretty dynamic, and I will commend you of that, and that's a wonderful thing. But you also got to think about, here we are, and when it slows down, what do I do? Well, those relationships that you built on the way is the most important thing. Now, that relationship can't come with a text message or an email. That's eye-to-eye contact. That's a handshake. That's that's where I got to where I am today, over all of these years. And when there was a lot of times I wanted to give up, and there was a lot of times when I wanted to go, hey, man, I think I want to go be a coach or a teacher. I'm going to go to work for this big construction outfit, or, you know, but again, I didn't. Center Development Company in the 80s. We had a Democrat in office, not that that matters, but prime and interest rates went to 18%, prime went to 18%, interest rates went 22%. Now you think about that. Now you want to talk about shutting the market down. We couldn't sell nothing, you couldn't give anything away. Couldn't build anything, you couldn't get any money because you couldn't afford to make the numbers work. So I went and met with a gentleman by the name of Jack McJunket. And Jack and his brother had one of the bigger development companies, commercial development companies in Dallas. And sat across the table from him, and I said, I'm looking for a job. I had a friend that was his secretary, that's how it got me in there. And he looked at me, and he knew who I was. I didn't know that at the time, but he knew who I was. And he goes, no, you don't want this job, because you won't be here in 6 months when this market turns. You keep doing what you're doing. Probably the best lesson I ever learned. Now, about a year or two later, I was appointed to North Texas Municipal Water District. This was actually in '84. And I walked in that boardroom of men from McKinney, from Forney. I'm talking about founding fathers from all of these cities that sit on this board that I was honored to represent Mesquite on this board. We're at a big horseshoe table. I sit down at this table and I look across the room, and Jack McJunket's sitting there in the room, and he's from Richardson. He's representative from Richardson. And he looked at me and kind of smiled. And I'm going, I felt like I was about that tall, okay? And so after the meeting, he come around, shook my hand, and went, welcome aboard. See what I told you? How's things going? I said, they're doing just fine. Thank you. So that's the thing that you got to do, as you know, those toes and those fingers that you step on as you're climbing that ladder of success, you're going to need those to catch you, because you will fall. I have fallen. I was doing a real estate deal, trying to figure out how I could make this thing happen. I needed it. This was before cell phones. This was pay phones, for all of you that don't know pay phones. And you had to have a quarter. I was in Fort Worth at Hewlin Mall, trying to lease some space over there. Didn't really know what I was doing. Got over there, and I had to borrow a quarter from a guy to call a man to come bring me some money to get gas so I could get back home. Now, I didn't make that deal, but that friend that I got to come get me is a guy that I had done some deals with, and we had that relationship that he come and help me in that situation. So you never know as you go down this road and you're selling somebody a house that all of a sudden you've built this relationship, and it didn't come from a text message or an email. It came from that handshake and that eye-to-eye contact and you being an agent. Now that's how it evolves, in my opinion. Now all of this that I'm telling you, and as my kids call me, especially my grandkids from time to time, the old dinosaur, I know how to do an iPad, I know how to work a phone, I know how to text, but I can talk a lot faster, and it's a lot easier. And that's how that word doesn't get crossed up like it does in an email or a text. That word come right out of my mouth, okay? And so that's the relationship that I think is vitally important, especially in today. But you got to make people. You got. I mean, how many times have I'm not pointing at you. You just sit here close.
He loves it. He loves the attention.
But you know, how many times was it easier to text? It's easier to text. It's easier to do that. But a lot of people,
he's not a good
a lot of people don't. I mean, a lot of people don't know how. They don't know how to make that eye-to-eye contact. I can't tell you. I've got a family in Crandall that I represent, and I've represented this family for 30 years, and so the mother, the grandmother. Actually, I'm down to the kids now because there's none of them left. But that's the type that you. That's where if you stick to it. And if you hang in there through thick or thin, you know, not every deal you're going to make, not every deal is going to happen, okay? And you don't go, oh man, I can't do this, you know. And I know you have to do that to stay alive, but you keep enough deals rolling you got 5 or 6 going, you know, you're gonna try to make the percentages work to where maybe you're batting 500, okay?
Don't depend on that one.
Don't pretend on the one, you know, and that's hard to do, especially whenever you're just getting into the business and you're going, wow, I just don't know if I can do this. I just don't know if I can stick it out. I just don't know if I can handle it, make that happen. So that's kind of a little bit of where I came from. But I think probably the most important thing is I learned, and I watched other agents as I was growing up. My dad had an office on the square, and my dad was B.J. Anderson. Well, I called him B.J. when we were at the office. Now, when we were home, or if it's just me and Dad, it was Dad. But we always worked hand in hand. Now, I kind of started doing construction. We built houses, and Dad was always in the real estate business. And then as I started, I got involved with doing some commercial buildings around Mesquite as I was going to college. And Dad didn't really care to do that, but I did that. But I was also selling real estate. So it was, when you have a client that comes to you, that's how I got in the commercial side from the home building business. And I met a guy that needed a building, so I helped him build a building. And so then after I built that building for him, then somebody else needed it. Was actually up on Dalworth Street. If you know where Dalworth is there in Mesquite, where Smiley's Racing is at, it's across the street from there. So that one thing led to another. But the key to me is whenever, in that particular case, I represented that client that needed a particular, in his case, he needed a building for his business, and that's what he needed. And right there, do the due diligence, help him. Then I helped him build the building, helped him buy the land, and then it worked out. So it was kind of a package kind of thing. But it was, again, I was his agent and his project manager to get that done. Okay. Now, there's opportunities that lay out there in front of you, and I saw a lot of people as I was going through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s that they wanted to be that real estate agent, but they also thought the idea they would see a deal that would come along and said, have an opportunity that you called and you've got a piece of property for sale and you want me to list it. And all of a sudden I realized you're not asking, it's a bargain. You're not asking quite what the market is. And I've seen people get the reputation for, I can get you that and I can sell that for you at that price. And then they would, in a roundabout way, play as the investor instead of the agent that they were called to be, okay? And then they get that reputation. And then you lose, once you lose your reputation, then it's shot. You don't ever get it back. Because you now aren't the honest agent. Because if I was the agent that I should have been to you, as I met you, well, you got your property, it's a little undervalued for where it should be. I think we should ask such and such for it, and I'm going to help you sell that. That you've done your job, and you have the respect, and you've got the guy more money than what he actually wanted for it, or he thought it was worth. So how far does that go for you versus, so I buy your property for $100,000, and I take and flip it in 6 months for $200,000. So I've made $100,000. Sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but it's not if you lose your reputation over it. So that's one of the things that I learned from my father and others around, the J.B. Galloways, the Royce Banks, the people that guys don't know, but they would sit in our office, which was on the square in Mesquite, and it was the place to come drink coffee in the morning. So I would listen to all these old guys talk. And it was no different back then. It was a me society then, but we helped each other. Does that make sense? So you had to listen to them, but you learned right there how important it was. If you're going to be an investor, then I put my real estate hat over here, and I'm going to be an investor. And that's what I'm going to be. Now, but tomorrow, I'm going to go back and put my real estate hat on, and then I'm going to go sell, and I'm going to treat you fairly, and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do for you as an agent. That's a fine line, and you've got to keep it separate, because that, to me, is, and you can be successful. Everybody in this room can be extremely successful if you give patience and you give it time and you work hard and you don't give up. Now, there was a deal that I was working on, and I played the agent. I played both sides, being a mediator. You talk about that when you go to all your MC classes, and you know, how are you successfully a mediator? I have done that a bunch of times. It's extremely difficult, but you have to have faith, and both sides have to have faith in you that you are being, I'm your agent to get this deal done, but I'm going to go over here and I'm going to help you two come together, and you're both going to be happy at the end of the day. And you have to be honest with both and yourself that when you finish this deal, I look at myself every morning and go, I got you the best deal, I made a deal for you, you needed the building, you needed to lease it, or you needed to sell it. And that's something that comes with experience in doing it. Now, I can't go say, she said so-and-so, and I'm going to make this deal for you. Or I'm going to go over and say, I know what he'll take, and I'm going to tell you what to offer. Because then you get that reputation. And that reputation can destroy, and I've seen it happen and destroy more people. And it comes back to haunt you. The good man upstairs will get in your brain and your conscious, and you can't live with yourself knowing. So that to me, in what we do and what we all do here, don't let greed and that money monster get in the way, because there's no money that buys you that reputation back. And that's a key that is, now so it's fun. It's fun playing the mediator. I'll tell you one deal I had, we had a land deal we were working on over in Lancaster. And I have a family that I represent, and I'm partners with them on things from time to time. And they were a very upstanding, wonderful family. And we needed this piece of property, and it had an old skating rink, but they had turned it into a bingo parlor. Well, it was sitting on the outskirts of a tract that we needed, but the family, well, it wasn't a family, it was a couple that owned it, and they were in the middle of a divorce, but this bingo parlor was making about $250,000 a month. And you don't get bingo license every day. And they had one of the old bingo license, but the two were fighting. So I went and said, look guys, I got a guy wanting to buy your property. It took me 1.5 years, and I finally bought it. And the only reason I bought it is because the two of them hated each other so bad, and they were tired of being partners. Okay? Now, you want to talk about a tough deal. I mean, because we're talking about some folks, you know, that we bought the deal for a little over $3 million, which was a bargain. When you think about it, they were making $250,000 a month. Cash money, half of it ain't probably reported if the truth was known, okay? But they got to a point of where you sit and you, extreme patience, don't get pushy, don't hurry up, we're going to lose this deal if I don't make it. Now I have my developers over here going, you got to get this bought or this deal ain't going to happen. And we actually lost a land deal during the process, but of course they didn't know it. And you're getting pulled from this side. But again, it's one of those things that it looks great, you can't wait to go to the title company, you're going to collect a big check, and you can push too hard and the deal will blow up in your face. But again, those kind of things as you get, and you talk about doing commercial, as you progress through, you might catch yourself going, I think I want to go lease buildings, or I think I might want to do these big industrial buildings, or those industrial buildings, you know, it might take you 2.5 years to get that deal done. Well, worth it. But again, in the meantime, you got to live. So you got to have a lot, just like you said, I got to have a lot of deals working. I got to have a lot of things happening. I can't just have one in the hopper, because I better have 10 around me, and I got to be working all of them. But it all boils back to that hand-to-hand, that eye contact, that relationship you have, you know, that comes, the bigger the deal, the more important that relationship is, in my opinion. And I think it shows dividends down the road. So I'm going to open it up. I'd love to hear some questions or some concerns or things you like or things you don't agree with. I'm not always right.
Have you
I don't mean to be.
dealt with apartments?
Do what?
I started in apartments.
Yes.
I did not have the patience to wait 9 months or something to close. It didn't mean you can't get it under contract, but you gotta go through all that due diligence, all that's flipping those leases. Ugh. That's why I went into residential, and then I started crawling back towards it, you know, in land development and stuff, and I'm like, I'm telling you, corporate America, you gotta put your pantyhose on, girls, and you gotta put your suit on if you're gonna deal with that kind of stuff. But we were dealing with South Dallas, I'm gonna call it sludge holes. You know, but they were 30,000 a unit, and you know now they're, well, I don't know, 80 or 90 probably.
Right.
But they were 30,000 a unit, and you need to be carrying a gun to walk through there, and you didn't know what was gonna come out of one of the doors. There might be a critter. But you know they're money hogs.
I never did any apartments. I have sold some condo units and stuff, but then when it comes to apartments, back in the RTC days when everything was really tough and the banks and government would foreclose on stuff, we went and established a management company. We managed a lot of stuff in apartments, but I didn't actually, when on site, I was managing the managing people because the government had it and you bid on it, and you were overseeing. You had to report the condition of the property. You had to report how the management company was doing. So you were just an oversight for the government during the process until they unloaded and sold the property. Then there was somebody else. There was an agent selling the property. You couldn't be the oversight management company, and you couldn't be selling it. So that's how crazy the government can get with the way they were doing things. But you want to talk about some sites. I mean, it was, and you had to go physically lay eyes on every room and every apartment all the way through. And I mean, it's just amazing.
I don't know what they did in those buildings, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty.
Yeah, yes, sir.
We've talked about a little bit about the possibility, maybe down the road, of our company looking at some property management scenarios. We haven't in the past, but we're talking about it. We've got people interested in doing it. You've got a lot of commercial property management experience. Could you touch on that side a little bit? Tell us about some of the things you've done and just your overall thoughts and experience with commercial property.
We've got Resource Property Group, which is the management arm of what we do, and that's what Deborah, my wife, runs. And when I say she runs it, we've got shopping centers, we've got office buildings. We've actually sold. We've got one office building now. We've sold the others in the market that we've had for the last 6 or 7 years. It was a good seller's market, so but we still have properties that we manage, retail and office buildings and some warehouse space. Now, when you do that, what you do is you go in, and if it's a retail shopping center as an example, then you set up an account especially for that shopping center, and you collect all of the rents. And then if it's a triple net situation where you, at once a year, you bill them for all of the taxes, insurance, common area maintenance, and all these things. You pay all the light bills, you take care of the maintenance around the shopping center, you take care of all the complaints, whatever, based upon their lease. Then you got to have a plumber, you'll get a call in the middle of the night that a sprinkler head busted, or indoor sprinkler system, or you'll have flooding of a whatever the case might be. If it's a restaurant, you got things backing up. If it's whatever, and it's you know, the fees are structured around, you get a percent based upon the gross income off of the shopping center, but there's a lot of responsibilities that go along with it. If you're going to do that, you better have more than 1 or 2 properties, and you better have a software set up, but you set up individually. You've got this entity, this shopping center, this office building, everything's independent because you are a trustee for those funds. And then you have a report, anywhere from 10 to 20 pages, every month that you send to the owner. In some cases, they leave the money in the property account to take care of air conditioning units to go out, or roofs that have to be put on, or roof leaks, or what, or somebody runs into the front of a shopping center and tears out a storefront. Had that happen many a time. Or you have somebody that breaks in and tears the door down in the middle of the night. So you have to build somewhere and start, and you can, but then you want to try to get to a medium that you can manage and maintain, and that's left based upon what you want to do. Now, it's hard to be an agent and out here selling houses, leasing buildings, and you're also trying to manage. You gotta have a team set up that's there, that's taking care, like I have, and it's gotta be a trusted one. I've always said, whoever manages my money, I want to sleep with them. Because I mean, you got to be careful. I can tell you a lot of horror stories that, and it works. And don't misunderstand me. I'm an old school small guy, in a family company, and I've never worked for anybody else. I've worked around them, but I've never worked for a big company. So when you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's in different accounts, and you're accountable for it, and you're accountable to your landlord, owner, representative. I've had them in Canada, I've had them in California, I've had them in Florida, you know, and they look for that report, and where's my money? Send me a check once a quarter. That money better be there, and you better have it there. And so there's good and bad with it, and it's a good thing to start. We actually started that when the RTC I was talking about earlier. That's when we started it, and it was, we eased into it. Now to jump full force, like if you're doing a big office building, you know, you're gonna go up against the big guys. So you got, but there's relationships you can build, just like what you did with the condos. You asked me about that at the time. If you're set up to do that, okay, then that's a good start, and then you let it multiply from there. But again, it's time, it's patience, it's something that, you know, don't jump head first, feet first, and all in. Ease into the water, get into it at a slower rate to where you can handle it and you don't get yourself, because if it blows up in your face, what happens? There goes that reputation, then you can't do it, and you don't know what your job is. Hope I answered your question on that.
Yolanda?
Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions.
Okay.
So with the property management, did you solicit these companies to manage their property? How did you get them? How did you obtain them?
Good question.
Yeah, great question, great question. In one of the shopping centers, as an example, we've had that shopping center since 89. And it was an old shopping center that was basically, the family had the ground lease, and entity had the shopping center, and New York Life was foreclosing on the shopping center, which put the ground lease in default, which put us in a first position. So the family came to us and said, we don't want to lose the property. We think we want to take over the shopping center. And so I said, okay, let's evaluate this and see what's best for you. Well, with an attorney that I knew in Dallas, and he knew us and he knew we were in Mesquite. And so we just kind of joined teams and worked it out to where what was beneficial for the family was to go in and pick that up. So we bought that indebtedness on that shopping center from New York Life, refinanced it, and the family took it over because they had the, you know what a ground lease is? A ground lease is when you just have property underneath and you get X dollars, not a lot of money. And it was very beneficial in that particular case. Now, on the other couple of the buildings we did, I built the buildings. So I had an inside. Okay, so, but you can go out and solicit, you know, if you know, or if you're selling something for somebody and you need it. But you gotta have you gotta start somewhere. So you start with, I started with a couple of small buildings on Dalworth that I built years ago, but I wasn't managing then, and they needed somebody to take care of it. There wasn't a lot of money. We didn't make $500 a month just to collect and do it, but you gotta start somewhere. So it's just like, you start off and work your way into it. Was that your one question? What was
That's
your other one?
my second
Okay.
question is, what's your advice, or the first step, or the primary step, or the prep step for entering into commercial real estate as an agent?
You know, today you know, there's all aspects of commercial, okay? You could take a commercial piece of land that you were talking about. You could play the role as you got a piece of land that needs to be developed, okay? So you could sell that, or you could take a building. Bruce had a building over in Mesquite that some guys had bought for an investment and was trying to sell the building, and they were basically buying it, trying to make a profit and sell it. So you know, you could do a shopping center There's somebody, you're leasing something in that shopping center. You know somebody wanting to put in a mom and pop business. So then you familiarize yourself with the market and what the rental rate should be, and you help negotiate that deal. It's, once again, take baby steps in getting into it. Or you go to work in Dallas and you go, I'm going to join a team with somebody at JLS or whoever it might be, and you go to school on them for a little while. You can do that. Nothing in the world wrong with that, okay? But now you're committed, you're there, and you're sharing in a percent of whatever it is that they're doing, and you're doing the groundwork, you're getting all the information, and then they might have 2 other guys that's more senior of you, and you pay your dues. Hey, I paid my dues. I did it in a different way. I got beat up. I didn't make every deal I did, you know, that you just learned the hard knocks way. But you can do that. If you, this young man here, I think, just got his license not long ago. He might decide, hey, I want to go, you know, I want to go work doing office leases in downtown Dallas. That's all you're going to specialize in. That's all you're going to do for that group. You're going to do a market analysis, and you're going to do all the studies. You're going to say who's moving. We got a lease coming up in the Renaissance building. We're going to move them over to the First National building, you know, and that's what you're doing. But again, that's all you're doing. To where if you're selling houses and you're out here beating the bushes in the streets, whether you're in Greenville or Terrell or Mesquite or Forney or wherever, and you see something or an opportunity there, then you could ease into that opportunity and be doing a little bit of a land deal that you might have listed, or you might have a small office building somewhere, or you might have a friend that needs to put in a beauty shop or a nail salon. Just do your homework. Know what the market is. Know what the rental rate should be. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call. You know, I don't know what this is. Can you help me with this? You know, most people, they get their pride a little bit higher than what it should be, and they don't know how to ask. There's never a dumb question, and that's the thing that I think is the most important. Oh, I know that. I know how to do that, or I can figure that out.
These are based on price per foot.
Yeah, and so
you're in the commercial, it's price per foot, $10, $12, cheaper ones, 20, 30, whatever, higher ones.
and you're in a different market right now. There's not a lot of negotiating there, just like on the houses. I mean, my goodness, who would have ever thought that they're giving 20 and 30% over listing? I mean, that's just crazy to me. I mean, and again, I don't do houses. I have sold houses in my life, but I don't. And my son Sam, who's helped friends, you know, he's more right now engaged in the construction side of what he's doing, but he'll have a friend or something, and he'll help them buy a house, and it's just we're still a member of MLS. We're a member of the board, have been a member of the board for a long time, and but I'm going, it's just amazing to me. He got 7 or 8 offers on one house, and we were I went with them. I covered for him one day. And we were the 7th person to look at. I had the lock box and I didn't even know how to do that. And I took them in, and that way it was like 9 o'clock. And hell, there'd already been all these people that were waiting in line, and they were waiting on us to come out so they could go in and look at it. And it was actually my niece, and she's going, "We need to make an offer. We need to make an offer. We need to make an offer right now." I'm going, surely to God they're going to wait and stack all these offers up on somebody's desk before they start making a difference and go through. She goes, but I want to be the top one, and I'll offer more. And I'm going, let's just get in the car and go. Okay? So it's beyond me on what it is and how the market is. Even though it's settling down, guys, it's still it will balance itself
One more
out.
question, Terry,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. For those agents that get some commercial land, and you've been a blessing to me a few times with some phenomenal advice and information on where to go and where to start. But you know, for an agent that maybe they've figured out the zoning, maybe they've figured out what can go there, but they don't have all those relationships with all the retail contact people, etc. Any advice for that agent with that commercial land trying to figure out how to somehow move that land?
Well, the number one thing, if you've got an opportunity on a 50 acres or 20 acres, or somebody wants to buy it to build their own commercial building on, you know, you gotta lead them to the point of, you gotta check the zoning, number one, you gotta check the utilities, you gotta check the, it's just like selling a lot out here in the country to build a house on nowadays. It's the same applies on the commercial side. Number one, check your zoning to make sure that city is gonna allow you to build what you wanna build there, what you want to do with it. Then go check your, you know, have him go, you know, or somebody that's not necessarily your job to verify, because you get yourself in trouble because, well, you told me there's water. Well, the water's not just here; it's 1,000 yards away. It's going to cost you another 15,000 to get it here. You make sure you guide them, and I think we talked about this during the process of when you were doing the other deal. You can give them too much information that puts you on the line, and you become liable. No different than with power. Power's a big thing nowadays. And you could be out here and I need 3-phase service, I need 483 phase that I gotta have to this building. Well, okay, it's a block and a half away and it's gonna cost you $40,000 to get it. Well, all you can do is give your purchaser, and that's who you're representing, the information to go and check this out before you jump in here and commit, or you don't be committing and verifying things, because then it puts you on the hook. Now, another thing as you get into commercial that you have to be real careful of is when you buy a commercial piece of property, being an office building or a retail building or whatever that's developed, it's already developed, you got ADA requirements now. And so I'm buying this old building that was built in the 80s or 90s and even in the early 2000s. Well, they got a bathroom that doesn't comply, they got a ramp that doesn't comply, and they got no parking, handicap parking out front, so then you got to tear out half of the parking to put in proper. And you have to at least say, look, you need to check on all of your requirements. You need to hire an architect, you need to hire an engineer. We're buying a piece of property right now for a doctor in Terrell, and it's on the corner of Apache and 148 next to Soul Man's Barbecue. You know where that is?
I do.
Okay. We've got that under contract right now. We've had it under contract now we got a 90-day look. We're probably 40 days in. We had to do a phase one, $2,000. We had to do we hired an engineer. We had to do a site plan. We had to go to the city. This is what we're going to build here. It's going to be retail, but it's going to be we call it retail, but it's going to be a medical office. It's going to be an orthopedic surgeon's office and some additional space. So we get, and it's a pretty pricey piece of property, but I think it's a key piece for where it's located, where all the activity's happening in Terrell. So we spent for the phase one, it come back clean. Now we have to do a soil report, that's $2,500. Now we ain't bought anything, okay, but you're spending money. We hired an engineer. The engineer has done 3 site plans for us. We find out from Terrell has got some of the toughest restrictions on parking requirement for medical. So now we went from a 10,000 foot building, we're down to a 7,600 square foot building. So now, is our dollars still working? Can we still make this dog hunt? Well, I've got a user. So I've got a doctor that needs a clinic. He's got a clinic in Sunnyvale. He wants a clinic in Terrell so he can pick up all of the in-between traffic that you're going to have. You all know what's going on the homes and stuff in between here and there. So, but now we've already, here we just keep spending money. The engineer, we're up to about 6,000 into the engineer, so we're 10,000 into this piece.
You paid?
No, the owner,
No.
the purchaser.
The purchaser
Oh,
pays
okay.
that.
The purchaser.
Just like your option fee
Yeah.
and the inspection, except
Due diligence.
on a bigger
Due
level.
diligence.
And that's so that's where we are with that. And we've already been to the bank. We can get the financing. We don't know how much the building's going to cost. We know how much the land is. We know how much we're giving for that. Now, I'll start doing budgeting once we know what we're building. Then I can say, okay, here's what this total package is going to be, whether it's $3 million or whatever it is. That's the building, the land, and everything. But in the process, they're going to spend before we get there, okay, to make sure that it's not sitting on an old dump or we don't have bad soil or whatever the case might be. Those are the kind of things that I wear a different hat. I have a consulting company that is mine. It's TSA Consulting. I have the B.J. Anderson company that sits over here. That's our real estate company that does our leasing and selling. We've got Resource Property Group that does nothing but management. They don't commingle, 2 totally different companies. I've got TSA Constructors. That's our construction company that builds the buildings. And I've got TSA Consulting. Now that consulting is as you get deeper into the commercial side, then you hire me to go hire engineers, architects, and all the people that do all of these reports for you. And because if you've got I keep looking at you, sweetheart, I don't mean that. If you're running your business, you don't have time to be doing this, and you really don't know everything. It took me years to get to this point. But I'm going to go put the group together to determine what we need to build your clinic. And then we're going to put a budget together. And then if you want us to build it for you, okay, then I've got a construction company that can do that for you. You don't have to. There's no strings attached. There's nothing there. Because I'm selling you the property at B.J. Anderson Company. That's a commission I'm going to get when I sell the property. I'm only going to half of it, okay? And so then I've got this, and then that company's liable that I know where that water line is, I know where the power is, I know where, what you can do, what meets the parking requirements for the use that you're going to put in there, okay? Because if we'd have built a 10,000-foot building and we'd have put medical in,
You need a certain number.
we wouldn't have enough parks. So we didn't hire the engineer that did our layout, and then you trap the doctor and you get him down and slow down, quit doing surgery, let's talk about what we want to do here. Well, I think I want to do an imaging center, and I want to do LabCorp, the blood lab. And okay, then that building starts shrinking because we got to have more parks. So the B.J. Anderson Company's not liable for all of that, the TSA Consulting is. But it took me a long time to get that to where I established that company. And then I get a fee for that work, because that's work separate from my job's done when like we talked about, when I get you on contract and I'm doing my job to sell you the property, it's not your job to go out and get the soil report and the phase 1 and all the thing, and you got to get an appraisal. You got to help them start the appraisal process with whatever bank or whoever's going to do the lending. So that's the different hats that you wear, and that comes in time. That comes down the road. Now, you start with the house. It's no different than when you're going to list this house, or you're going to sell this house. We got to get it inspected. So you go, okay, do you know an inspector? You got to be careful. You can't recommend a title company. You can't recommend an inspector. You got to have that relationship, okay? Because if you represent the seller and then you suggested somebody of yours that's an inspector, you know, that's where you have to really clamp the mouth, not say too much. I'm here to negotiate, get you the best price, and then you got to sit back and be careful how you go about letting the deal happen, because that's where you get in trouble, in my opinion. Okay, especially today, because is it not true that there's always people sitting out there looking for a reason to come after you and sue you, and it's your fault. It's never, nobody takes ownership in anything nowadays. Well, I mean, that at least you see that a lot. So,
Any other questions?
go. Yes, sir.
It sounds like the size of the building determines the size of the parking lot in these type of deals, or is that just with the medical?
No, it's the use of the building. You're right. Now, if I do retail, if I do medical, it's one spot for every 150 square feet. If I do a restaurant, it's 100 square feet per parking spot. If I do retail, it's 250. It's usually around 300. If it's office, it's 300. If it's retail, it's 250. So it varies.
Okay.
And every city is different.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Especially
So,
zero.
and they don't vary from that. You can go ask for a variance. And sometimes, most of the time not, because you got to remember that staff member suggested this ordinance to be established. So he's not going to go back, oh yeah, that's Johnny, he's going to go over here and build this real pretty building, we're going to let him get away. The odds of that happening
It's not that.
are real good. So, but yes, it all depends upon the use of the square footage of the building, not the land. And that's one of the, now you as an agent, that's not your job. It's your job to tell who the purchaser is that you need to check these things out. That's all. You've done your job. Now, if he tells you to go verify, you know, that's when you got to go, okay, you know, really, you know what you need to do. Between, I mean, you leave it here and get into the city hall, you might change your mind 3 times. Because if you go check it out for retail, then all of a sudden you get it built and this doctor comes along and you can fill it up with all doctors. You don't need it, so who's going to be responsible? You know, well, they're going to come back and talk to you about it anyway.
He's the one that told me.
So that's where, don't give too much information and be careful how you give it, not to overcommit yourself, because then you've committed, you haven't committed anything, but then you put your broker in harm's way. So that's and nobody wants to get anybody in trouble, and you're just being helpful and honest and wanting to try to make the deal happen and put it together, whether you're on the seller side or not. Now, I'll tell you one other thing about leasing. When you're leasing, I don't care what, if it's office buildings or retail, and you get one of the boys out of Dallas that comes out, you know, everything we do, and I was raised, is 3 and 3. Okay? If they have a tenant, and I've had this happen, and I've had multi-million-dollar leases, they get 4.5% and you get 1.5%. You got the building, it's your deal, your lease. The leases are about 40 pages long. You're going to produce and do all the work. He's going to show up one time, bring a tenant out, show the building, bam, he's gone. And you might talk to him a few times, but he's going to get, and he'll demand it, and you'll have to fight him. But this stuff of 3 and 3 with any of the big companies in Dallas, I mean, they'll lose a deal. I have never, ever lost a deal over a commission. So, but just remember, when you get into that market and you decide you want to do work, have the tenant, not the building, okay? So, any other questions?
So are y'all not charging more for commercial when you're listing them?
No, same fee.
Same fee?
I've been getting 6% ever since I started. But what had happened, what's happened, the values have gone up. You know, now I have people all the time that go, I want to charge 10% for this deal. Now, if it gets real small, your cost of doing business is, you know, if you get a deal that's not too many deals around, it's 20,000 or 40,000 anymore. But you know, it's all in sixes. Now, when you get into the bigger deals over $1 million, a lot of times you'll go 6% on the first $1 million and then 3% on anything above that. That's all they're always negotiable. All fees are negotiable. That's why you should have an agreement. I'm old school. When I tell you something, I shake your hand. That's the deal. That's done. I don't have listings. I don't list anything. Not that that's smart. No. I mean, I have all kinds of people that I do stuff for, that I help them with their property. And trust me, and I keep calling them the guys in Dallas, they'll call the owner. Okay? And you have a sign up on a piece of property, they'll call the owner. And then that's that relationship I talk about, that the owner goes, no, you need to call Terry Anderson.
Right.
He'll tell you about it. Okay? Now, I don't have anything to write with them. I've just represented them for years, or they know that I'm helping them with it. And they'll do it to you every time. That's just, and that's the cutthroat nature of the business. But you'll look up. I've seen a lot of guys come and go. A lot of guys come and go. And that's okay. Because always be able to look at yourself every morning in that mirror and be happy with what you've accomplished that day. That's my biggest, and to know who you represent and be that guy that represents with respect. So I'll sit there all night and answer questions, but I don't want to keep y'all. Y'all got other things to do. I appreciate it, and it's a privilege to be here.
Are y'all glad you came? I want to say this. Terry talked a lot about reputation. I can tell you, of course, before I got in the real estate business, I remember Johnny, sometimes going to y'all's office and borrowing a form, or just the collaboration and the friendship that you and your family always showed us and other realtors. But I'll tell you, since I've been in the business, there's been a handful of times where I've had some commercial stuff come along, and even when Johnny was still alive, and Johnny reminded me calling you, and man, he was extremely helpful to me. Not every commercial broker will do that. I've worked with just a handful in the few deals I've had, and some were like, oh, that's your problem. Talk to your broker. I'm sorry, I ain't gonna help you with that. I'm like, thanks. We had a lease deal several months ago on Downtown Square that, there were a few I's dotted and T's crossed that he didn't have to help me with, but he did. So I think we need to all be those kinds of realtors that, you know, we're not competitors. We really should be colleagues. Sure, we may be on the other side of the deal with somebody, but, you know, I want the other realtor to be treated with respect and be taken care of. And so, you know, not every commercial broker would come talk to another agency like Terry has. So thank you so much, Terry, for tonight. Thank you very
Well,
much.
I will tell you, Johnny would call, we would talk, every other month or two. He'd have a question or something would come up and he'd call, and then I'd know something, I'd call him. What, you know, there was, you know, your true friends that you have out there in the world, you know who they are, and you can always depend on them and count on them. In this me society we live in today, you know, we only get here because we are all here working together, and it takes a we society to make it happen. Me can't sell one house, but we can. And that's the thing that we've got out of kilter. But Johnny, I can remember Johnny would call and he'd have this, or I need this farm or that farm, and I bitched every year what we had to pay in dues as far as MLS, because we don't really use it. Or I'm going, what the hell, why are we a member of the board? We've been a member of the board, and because you got to get the farms. Now, commercially, you hardly ever use those farms. You have your own leases, and they look like a Bible, and then the attorneys have to get involved, and the attorney can screw up a deal faster than anything. But you gotta have it. But anyway, y'all enjoy your night, and it was an honor.
Thank you.
One of these nights we'll talk about water.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you.
All right.
Thank y'all. So, quick wrap